Alright, so tonight I'm going to be taking a look at Dark Innovator's request from the Discord. It's Wolf Lord Row, The Future of the Emperor Revealed. Now, I'm going to be trying a different kind of setup today. Normally I record on this screen, but glare off the glasses and everything like that. So tonight I'm going to be trying to record off the screen I have right here. And just let me know what you guys think. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and hit start on this. And move the microphone over here. There we go. Yeah. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, Wolflord Row here. Today we are discussing the Emperor of Mankind, and a reveal that, if true, could shake the very foundations of the Imperium. General spoiler warning to begin, as we will be discussing events from across the world of Warhammer 40k. So you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So the Emperor of Mankind, the be-all and end-all of the 40k universe. By far and away the most important character in all of the lore bar none. Anytime we receive a scene or reference to him within the lore, you just know business has picked up. And there's really nothing
I get that JR reference.
more fascinating than his current status. The reawakening of the Emperor has become the hottest subplot going in the current era, because it can change absolutely everything.
This is true.
The one man who can turn the tide of any war, no matter the odds, is the Emperor of Mankind. And this month we received some fascinating insights into just how the Emperor may have changed since ascending the throne. Now, earlier in the month, the Black Library author Dan Abnett did a Q&A interview with the website Ars Technica. At least I'm assuming it's pronounced that way. I'll drop a link to it in the description, guys, because it's always a great listen hearing from any of the Black Library authors. And of course here, with one of the big guns in Mr. Abnett, it is no different. Now, there's a lot of interesting tidbits and mentions throughout the whole interview, but the ones for me that really stood out was when Dan spoke about the Emperor. Very rarely do we get to see the writer's opinions on this most prominent of characters. So to hear Dan's opinion on him was really quite revealing. The first question in regards to the Emperor was, what would one see if they entered the Emperor's throne room? And Dan's answer is really quite thought-provoking in itself. The ultimate truth is probably something quite horrific. Sitting on something that vaguely resembles something that used to be a throne, but isn't a throne, but is actually just a huge complicated piece of apparatus, with pipes and tubes going everywhere. But even that is doubtful if that is there. To me, the most interesting answer to that is that most people who enter the throne room would probably last 4 or 5 seconds before they were killed, just incinerated by the brightness of the light, destroyed by the currents of the warp that are flying around the throne room.
Had to take out an angry animal. In any case, here we go. I backed up a little bit. I'm not sure how much noise got in there, but we'll see.
To running there. It is like the heart of a nuclear reactor that has melted down. It is not in any way, shape or form a conventional throne room that you walk into and bow and look up to the throne. It doesn't work like that. It is a mechanism at the heart of a bigger mechanism, and the notion that there is an emperor sitting on a throne in a throne room is just a part of the myth.
Yeah, so basically, the Golden Throne is nothing more than, I mean, the actual dimensions of it are different. Everything about it is kind of the opposite of what it actually is. It's golden. It was, I'm not sure if it still is, golden in color, but mainly that the Imperial Throne Room is basically the size of a stadium. And sitting in the middle of that is this extremely large structure, which on top of that is the apparatus known as the Golden Throne. And it never got fully finished. That was the big thing. If it had been finished, he was talking about the cords all over the place, piping, everything like that. That would have been hidden, put away, stuff like that. But there was no time, and there's been no time to do it since, and there's no way to actually do it without the people that actually know how to do it. And they're all dead now. Or sitting in a death-like state on said Golden Throne.
It is not a nice place. Now firstly, obviously it goes without saying this is just Dan's opinion, as you can tell by him beginning his answer with probably. And what a fault it is for the throne room to be considered horrific. The heart of this glorious galaxy-spanning empire. To be in the presence of the Emperor of Mankind. And it's horrific. Now we're all going to have our own opinions on what we imagine the throne room to be like. And there can be no doubt, the throne room is nowhere near the condition or state it was originally intended for.
True.
As we began to see during the heresy, the extra resources and service that became needed for the Golden Throne. So after 10,000 years, you can certainly expect it to have evolved or devolved much further. And Dan's view set is clearly very much one of the grim dark, as you would expect. I love the analogy of it being akin to the heart of a nuclear reactor and the currents of the warp floating around. I think the death within 4 or 5 seconds is a little OTT, as we know custodies and mechanicum servants come and go fairly frequently. And we have seen a few other people enter the throne room to be in the presence of the Emperor over the years. Whether or not this is still canon is obviously debatable. So my personal vision of the throne room isn't quite as drastic as Dan's, but I definitely like the theme of it being so far fallen from the throne room of old. Next up we had the question.
Basically when I envisioned the Imperial Throne, it is essentially, it's clean, of course. The custodies wouldn't allow anything to be just completely untidy in the presence of the God Emperor. That's of course. But it's just like with the Imperial Palace itself. Especially during the reign of Van Dyer, some parts of the Imperial Palace were neglected that the custodies weren't at. Well, the custodies are always around the Emperor in the Imperial Palace. And basically, the way I view it is, it's a clean space, it's dark, it's quiet. But I do think that there is a substantial amount of, power in there. I'm not so sure about the 4 to 6 seconds thing. The one of the references I've seen of somebody actually going in to the throne room after the events were before the Emperor was interred and after Magnus had breached the wards, was that the Emperor was shrouded in light. He was completely shrouded in light, and they were told not to look at him when they were being escorted through. I think that was, I can't remember which book it was in the Horus Heresy where they were actually being pulled through to actually go into the webway and wage war. In any case, shutting up, moving on.
And what does the Emperor truly look like? And Dan gives a fairly lengthy answer here, and goes on to mention something that is the heart of this discussion we are having. The Emperor presents himself like any good god should, in the form that is most useful to him to get across. And Dan then goes on to compare him to the Greek gods. What he looks like is unknown to everybody. What he appears as and manifests as is appropriate to the circumstance. That manifestation, particularly after the Unification War, that manifestation has to be godlike. It has to be as the Emperor. He has to command respect. Okay, so now this is undoubtedly the Emperor as we have seen him throughout the Crusade and the Heresy.
Pretty much.
Often appearing in different forms depending on the situation. More often than not, the golden armoured warrior we have all come to know. However, in times more the man beneath, when in conversation with one of his sons, or a flashback to earlier times, such as when we see him as Revelation, for example. Now Dan states his appearance is unknown to everybody, which I guess is true, as even in Master of Mankind, when we witness the Emperor's earliest memories, it is him sharing this vision with one of his custodies.
Yeah.
So of course the Emperor could well be choosing to show this particular image of himself.
We actually get another little tidbit when somebody who's actually a psychic blank looks at the Emperor from a respectable distance, of course. He's ageless, but they don't really go into a heavy description, which is kind of disappointing, because the only people that would actually know what the Emperor truly looks like would be those who are practically immune to psychic charms. And the Emperor uses a lot of them, just depending on who he's supposed to be near. In fact, Magnus himself is... he shares that gift with the Emperor, and they both used it to, varying effects. Horus had the Emperor's natural charisma, and that's how he was able to command so much, attention and respect from those around him. But Magnus shared his ability to essentially make himself look completely different. But, a lot of people say, why would the Emperor dress up in gold all the time, basically looking like a god? And a lot of that comes down to what we as people view with competence, people that have competence and would view for people to have respect. And if somebody showed up in like a business suit and tie in a military situation and started talking, you wouldn't very much pay attention to them. But look at some of the people throughout history in military, I'm probably going to edit this out, but from a military frame of mind, and what you have is people that have a unique look. MacArthur, Patton, General Montgomery. They all look different, but they were very, very, singular in the ways that, their appearance was. It was something unique about them. The Emperor is no different, but he was trying to be seen as a leader of a fledgling empire, as well as a military commander, as well as somebody that would command respect. Well, the problem with that is when that happens, you have a very short leap from that kind of figure to a god, and that's the kind of problem that he faced. In any case, shutting up, moving on. I'm probably making no sense. It's late. I'm a moron. There we go.
Though for me, I don't see any particular reason for the Emperor to deceive the custodies. Aside from the Primarchs, they are very much his prized creations. And I'm sure some of you would argue even more so. Yes. The custodies are simply incapable of betraying him. They are devoted to him in a way that goes way beyond any natural form of love. So for me, that understated Middle Eastern appearing boy of the ancient Hittite tribe, with the long dark hair and dark eyes, is most likely the Emperor's true appearance.
That would be my guess.
However, this is where things get really interesting, as Dan continues. The golden vision of the Emperor, the religious trappings with the saints, etc., are almost like a necessary psychological defense to keep the people of the 40k universe sane. And it speaks to the fact that the Emperor is probably not around as much as he'd like to be, that he hasn't done anything about it yet. Or, if he is around as much as he'd like to be, if he is genuinely watching over everybody in a higher psychic way, maybe he has come to the conclusion what he needs to be now is a god. The only way for humanity to survive is to trust in something divine above them, because otherwise with the rise of chaos everything would be too horrible to bear, and everything would be collapsing overnight. It is not definitively official, because again it strays into the mystery box we don't talk about. But I know it is headcanon shared by most of the key writers, and I believe therefore it makes it semi-official. Now if you watch the interview, Dan just kind of rattles this off as if it's nothing, but to loreheads like me, this is actually a major revelation. Yes, he makes it clear it is not official, because it's part of the mystery they can't talk about. But it's shared opinion of most of the key writers. And considering these are the guys creating and writing the narrative for us, until we get shown otherwise, let's be honest, it basically is definitive. Or at least unofficially definitive, as Dan says. The Emperor has most likely come to the conclusion he needs to be a god, and that humanity needs to trust in something divine above them to survive. Man, where do you begin with that? This could not be any further from the imperial truth.
Yes.
The imperial truth the Emperor himself founded the Imperium on. That he is not a god, that there are no gods, and that he does not desire or wish to be one, to free mankind from the shackles of religious worship. And here now, 10,000 years later, there's the distinct possibility, and again we'll say possibility as it's technically not confirmed, although come on, Dan basically just confirmed it, that he now knows he needs to be a god, to be the god emperor of mankind. I'm just not sure how to take that. The first half of Dan's answer, it speaks to the fact that the Emperor is probably not around as much as he'd like to be, that he hasn't done anything about it. Now that sounds like the Emperor we all know and love. This makes sense taking into account everything we know about him. There's just no way he would ever wish to be worshipped. But then to follow it up with, maybe he has come to the conclusion what he needs to be now is a god.
Okay, so I'm going to cut it on this one. Basically, the way I look at it right now, the Emperor, the God Emperor of mankind is already that. He is a god in the warp. He's a chaos god in the warp, without which certain figures wouldn't be able to exist. Certain things wouldn't be able to happen. Celestine, for example, the Legion of the Damned. Those things wouldn't be able to happen if there wasn't a substantial amount of, everything to make him into that. But what winds up, more often than not, is my own headcanon is the Emperor, during the Great Crusade, told everyone there were no gods, but now, things have, he was proven to be wrong in front of everybody, or he was proven to have lied in front of everyone. But it was to preserve things. With him becoming worshipped in mass like he has been, I think he already is a deity. But we'll see. Going on.
The only way for humanity to survive is to trust in something divine above them. Pardon the pun here, but this is anathema to everything the Emperor ever believed in or fought for. To truly understand the Emperor's crusade and mindset on religion, I cannot recommend enough for those of you who have never read or listened to go check out the Horus Heresy short story, The Last Church. I will drop a link to the audiobook on the Black Library website in this description. It's written by Graham McNeill and narrated by the undoubted voice of the Emperor, Jonathan Keeble. And in it, the Emperor has a debate with a priest. Whether you think the Emperor is right or wrong is unimportant. What is important is you understand the Emperor's viewpoint, the core of his goals. His entire existence is fundamentally opposed to religious worship, to free humanity.
His entire existence was built off denying the Chaos Gods a final victory. And the Emperor is everything if pragmatic. He is nothing if pragmatic, actually. That was the biggest part of his reasoning for doing some of the things that he did that we all questioned during the Great Crusade. I have a whole series of lore videos I'm about to add to it because of this. But he was pragmatic to a fault when it came to this sort of thing. I can readily see him changing his mind. I can readily see him, thinking, okay, this did not work. This is not going to work. There's nothing I can do. What's the other option? And then to basically embrace what has happened, because there is no other alternative right now. Either he does this, or things go downhill. It's not the first time he's been in a situation where he's made that kind of decision, where he does something completely off the rails. The imperial truth right out of the gate was built off of him pragmatically telling people and that there are no gods, even though he knew that to be false. In any case, continuing on.
From this logic, to have humanity worship him is, for want of a better expression, heresy. Look, I'm not saying it's a right or wrong direction to take. As always, that's down to everyone's own individual opinions. That's the beauty of the law. For me personally, I much prefer that first explanation of the only reason the Imperial Creed and worship has taken over is simply because the Emperor hasn't been able to do anything about it. It's one of the integral parts of the tragedy of 40k. The Emperor becomes the one thing he never wanted to be. He sought to free humanity from worship, and instead becomes its focus.
True.
Again, for me, to have him kind of accept that, whether through necessity or not, does kind of diminish his story in my eyes.
It doesn't in mine. It does not in mine at all. And the reason being is because his whole goal is the survival of humanity as a species. That's his goal. And one of the things that happened when he was interred on the Golden Throne was, if the same plan would work without him doing some of the things that he has done, then that's all well and good, but it was not going to work out like that. After the Horus Heresy, the Imperium was pretty much completely shattered, and it is held together by duct tape, glue, and bubblegum. And something has to change. Humanity is fighting a losing war, and has been since the end of the Horus Heresy. It has been fighting a continuous war of attrition on all sides, And the Emperor would know well enough that something had to change. His viewpoint would have to alter. The way he did things would have to change. It was the same thing as before. I mean, the argument that Wolf Lord Rowe is making right now is, it seems kind of strange the Emperor would do, X, Y, Z when he had been against it all along. Well, he had been in the background of humanity the entire time up until he sat there and said, okay, this needs to happen because the boat has flipped over. We need to flip the boat back over and get it back on course. So I'm going to step forward and take control. In any case, moving on.
Let's be clear. The Emperor is to all intents and purposes a god. I don't think anyone can debate that now. The Imperium's worship of him has raised him to levels of power he has never been at before. But does that mean he has to accept it? I'm not so sure. Now, on the other hand, you could say, what option does the Emperor truly have? The Imperium has been ripped asunder, and the threat of chaos is at a level now never seen. Despite his imprisonment upon the throne, he is now more powerful than ever, most likely due to the worship of his entire race.
This is true.
Knowing how utterly dedicated the Emperor is to defeating chaos, is it unrealistic to say he wouldn't decide to use the weapon of faith? If it meant giving him an opportunity to not only take the fight back to chaos, but to finally, ultimately, defeat it. I could definitely see him doing that. Once chaos is dealt with, he could then decide to re-implement the Imperial truth all over again. Chaos is, after all, the ultimate threat. Regardless, going down this road certainly raises more questions. His returning Primarchs, for example, are wholly and completely dedicated to his vision of the Imperial truth, as we see now with the returned Rabute, who is disgusted by what the Imperium has become.
This is very true.
Who barely manages to repress his anger at it enough to deal with the larger threat of chaos. How would he react if his father was to then turn around and inform him that he is a god? How would the rest of the returning Primarchs react? That is a major discussion point right there. I can't see any of them being happy about it, even with their love and loyalty to their father. But I mean, can you imagine Jagatai's reaction? A father he always called a tyrant, now declaring himself a god.
Again, this is without context. That would be like me walking up to people, but I'm a god now. Well, okay, whatever, bitch. That's the exact reaction I'd expect to get. The Emperor is a far different matter. He wouldn't just walk up to Rabute and be like, "Hey, I'm a god, by the way." That wouldn't quite work out. But the Emperor is not the way that his sons remember him. Not in the slightest. He is just he's on a whole different level of power right now. And even though Rabute is disgusted by this, I think he would actually see why. I think it wouldn't be so much a thing as, it's being made out here, because there is saying you're something and then actually being it. I don't think the Emperor would actually have to tell Gilliman anything. The Emperor would just, prove it through action. In any case, moving on.
Man, that would be something to see. Honestly, it's a fascinating debate, and knowing the key writers do mostly have this in mind when they're writing certainly is a bit of a game changer now when it comes to the future of the Emperor. It's certainly up to the ante on where Guy Haley is going to take the Emperor next in Godblight. which is coming up for pre-order very, very soon. Man, I think there's going to be something very impactful in those pages. But as always guys, what do you think? Do you think the Emperor has decided he needs to be a god? Or do you think he would just never embrace that philosophy? Regardless of the situation. Is he happy about the religious worship or not? And where would you like to see the Emperor's story go next? Like I said, check out the interview with Dan, it's a really good listen. And if you've never read or listened to The Last Church, definitely check that audiobook out too. It's a real interesting listen. But as always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.
Alright, so that was Wolflord Rowe, The Future of the Emperor Revealed. I disagree with a good amount of his stances on this, and it strictly comes from a point of, you know, just pragmatic, just pragmatic approach to how certain things are portrayed. The Emperor would just never go up to Rabute and be like, "Hey, I'm a god, by the way," because at that point Rabute would just look at him like, "Oh, have you lost your mind?" And it's not something he can flip off and flip on, and it's not something he can automatically declare himself. It's not something he can do. The Emperor would know that well enough that, has he achieved if he achieved apotheosis or not, or if he's even close. It might come down to the Emperor deciding that that is what he needs to be, and therefore he just, it's a real question of how would it actually transpire for the Emperor to essentially become a god. But, for me, I don't think that Jagatai would actually have anything to really say about it past the normal thing where it was mentioned and he shared his opinion on it. But I don't think his opinion would be a bad one. I think Gilliman knows his father well enough to know that whatever the Emperor decides to do, he's doing it from a purely pragmatic approach. This is not what might be desired, but this is what has to be done. Jagatai would fall underneath the same category. Jagatai, as Wolflord Rowe says, consider the Emperor a tyrant. Jagatai had spent his early life deposing tyrants. But in any case, that's it for this video. Wolflord Rowe, I do like his opinions, but that's the great thing about... I do disagree with his opinions, but that's the great thing about 40K. We can disagree on lore, especially two people like me and him who probably have much differing views on the way the lore and certain things in it, actually vibe with each other. My personal opinion, the Emperor is one step away from apotheosis. And part of it might not be anything more than him just actually accepting his status. In any case, I'll catch you guys later. See you next time. Please like and subscribe, all the other kind of stuff. I'm putting his links down. I'm putting his links down below, just like mine. And I'm going to learn how to speak English better.